Question number 52 on the reading portion of College Boards Test 5. The questions in lines 74 to 78 primarily serve to. So primarily serve, what do they bring to the table? What are they doing? What do they serve to do? What are they, what agenda are they furthering for the author that is not done anywhere else in the passage? Primarily serve to. Let's read. At first glance, let's read a little bit more. I don't understand what first glance is. Surprisingly, when the mental athletes, line 66, were learning new information, they were engaging several regions of the brain known to be involved in two specific tasks: visual memory and spatial navigation, including the same right posterior hippocampal regions that the one. Okay, they were using two parts of their brains, the super mental athletes. At first glance, this wouldn't make any sense. So they're saying that this doesn't make any sense that they're using, I guess, visual memory as well as spatial navigation. Why would mental athletes be conjuring images in their mind when they were trying to learn three-digit numbers? So I guess that means, why are they trying to use visual memory when they're trying to think of numbers? Why should they be navigating like London cabbies when they're supposed to be remembering the shapes of snowflakes? So I think this is elaborating on this puzzling situation. At first glance, this wouldn't seem to make any sense. What doesn't make any sense? And now we're going to ask, why would mental athletes be conjuring images in their mind's eye when they're trying to learn three-digit numbers? Why are they using visual memory? Why are they using spatial memory? These are the questions that are being asked. So when you look, the questions primarily serve to, I think that they serve to elaborate on why something is confusing or why something doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. What doesn't make any sense? Why is it that you use this part of the brain? Why is it that you use the spatial part of the brain for navigation like the London cabbies? These are the questions that we bring up in order to, I think, just better understand our confusion. That's what I think it serves to do. The questions in line 74 to 78 primarily serve to raise doubts about the reliability of the conclusions reached by McGuire. Are we saying do those questions lead us to believe that McGuire's findings are somehow not plausible or somehow not authentic? Maybe they're doctored, or maybe they're not exactly they're not able to be replicated? I don't think these questions are not bringing up so why is it that, and we're trying to cast doubt on her findings. We're not doing that. There's no reason for us to believe that her findings are, anything other than credible. So we're not raising doubts. That's not the reason why we bring up these questions is it so what's the deal with this? Why is it that we have, no doubt necessary here, especially about the reliability of her conclusions. We're just trying to understand a puzzling conclusion. B, emphasize and elaborate on an initially puzzling result of McGuire's study on mental athletes. I like that. Where the initially puzzling result is they're using different parts of their brain, visual and spatial navigation. At first, it doesn't make any sense. And now we're going to talk about these questions in order to better maybe understand what parts of this don't make any sense. So maybe it's B. What about C? The questions in 74 to 78 primarily serve to imply that McGuire's findings undermine earlier studies of the same phenomenon. So what does it mean to undermine earlier studies? It means that of the same phenomenon. It means that people did that exact same study, and her results somehow show that the earlier people were wrong. So it might be true that her study about taxi drivers, that changed the way that we viewed things. Because if you remember the beginning of the piece, it says that her study suggested that old inherited wisdom was simply not true, that the brain can't change. But I feel like this answer choice C is getting the whole passage confused, because we only care in this case about 74 to 78. And her findings undermine earlier studies of the same phenomenon. People didn't do these studies before. There's no reason for us to believe, or we don't have any knowledge of prior studies that deal with the same phenomenon. We don't. Furthermore, not only do we not have those previous studies or know that they exist or not, the reason why we have these questions in line 74 to 78 is to imply then that these findings undermine earlier studies of the same phenomenon. That's why we're having these rhetorical questions. No, I think these rhetorical questions are here to just elaborate and better explain what's the deal with visual memory and spatial navigation, and why are they using them in the way that they do. And what do we do in this next paragraph? McGuire and her team asked the mental athletes to describe, and we find out exactly why they are conjuring images up and why they're navigating like London cabbies. So I'm not a fan of C either, but though I feel like C is a really good bad answer if you're confused. You know, there's like 5 seconds left to this question, you're like, okay, this seems reasonable. You can almost sense though that they're trying to trick you. And I think that's an important skill just to pick up on in this case, that they're trying to muddy the waters by talking about things that are in the realm of what we're discussing, but in no way are they connected. Or if anything, they're just way too convoluted and tangled to make any sense. What a D. The question in line 74 to 78 primarily served to introduce and explain a connection between McGuire's 2 studies and her earlier work. Again, a good bad answer, because you see the part about they talk about London cabbies and you're like, oh, she's talking about the earlier work of London cabbies. No. You have to ask yourself, is this thing primarily serves to connect her new study with her old study? Introduce and explain a connection between McGuire's 2 studies and her earlier work? The main reason why she's bringing up these questions is in order to talk about and maybe elaborate an initially confusing aspect of the study. Why are they using these parts of the brain? Why are they using visual memory and making pictures when they should be doing this? Why are they doing the things that cabbies would do in the street instead of just memorizing a number? Or instead of finding the shape of a snowflake? We're not explaining a connection between our early work. That's not the primary purpose. That's not what it serves to do. This thing, I think, best serves to just take a time out and explain what the puzzling situation is, which is exactly what B is doing. The question in line 74 to 78 primarily served to emphasize and elaborate on an initially puzzling result. We're emphasizing and elaborating on this one point, which is they think in different ways than normal people do. And the parts of the brain responsible for memorizing certain things are different in mental athletes than in normal people. And I think this is the thing that we really need to highlight. The answer number 52 is going to be B.